my god, I sound so husky. Oh my gosh. Hi guys, welcome back to another vlog. If you can't tell, I am a little bit unwell. That's fine though, because I have a lot to talk to you guys about today and I can't wait. I am doing a June and July combined reading wrap up because I realized I never wrapped up my books from June, and I've got so much to talk about because I read some really good books. Did I read many books? No. Did I read like 6 books combined between June and July? Yes. But I had a fun time in the books that I did read, so we're going to talk about them today. I might even tell you guys about the books that I'm currently reading. The issue I'm having, okay, we're just going to be real for a second. The issue I'm having is I keep starting books and then not finishing them, and then I feel like reading something else, so then I'll start something else, and then I'll finish that, but then I've got all of these books that I haven't finished yet, and it means that like half of my month is wasted and I don't get to all of the books that I want to read. Maybe the next video will be finishing all of the books I'm halfway through, because I have like 4 or 5 books that I haven't finished and it's really, really annoying me. Let me get my books, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. Okay guys, I'm so excited. Let's get into it. So in the months of June and July, I read 6 books. Yes, sometimes that is the amount I will read in 1 month, and I read that in 2 months, but we're not going to talk about that today. We're just going to talk about the 6 books that I read in June and July. Let's get started. We're going to start with June. So I feel like I need like a side table I can put hang on, I've got an idea. She is ingenuitive. Definition? Not sure. Ingenuity. Adjective. The quality of being clever, original, and inventive. She was ingenuitive. Yeah, we're gonna go with that. Anyway, let's start with One Dark Window. Now, I picked this book up because I was seeing it all over TikTok. Basically, this was sold to me as like a gothic romantasy. I guess you could say like a dark romantasy. We're following Elsbeth, who is in a world in which magic is illegal, I guess you could say. So basically we're following Elsbeth, and she lives in this mist-locked kingdom called Blunder. Magic in this world is treated as an infection which will lead to someone's demise. So it's a very unique magic system, which I thought was very interesting going into this book. I've never really read anything like it. And it actually has this really unique and interesting storyline involving, they call them Providence cards, but they're actually like tarot cards. And essentially the only way to lift the mist and cure the infection of all the people who are infected with magic is to unite all of the Providence cards that will lift the mist. And each one of these cards basically has a different power that the user can tap into, and you don't have to have magic to tap into these cards. Elsbeth, our main character, she is unique as well because she actually has what she calls a monster living in her head, and essentially that monster is guiding her through this journey to try to find all these Providence cards. I really, really enjoyed this book. It definitely surprised me. I really loved like the witchy vibes. It's definitely giving like historical, medieval. Yeah, the vibes are very gothic, witchy, dark, romantic, poetic. Like the writing style is just like, you know when you read a book and you're like, this is just a well-written book. Like it's just, every line is so well thought out. That's what I thought of this book. It is a bit of a slow burn, so the romance element, it definitely isn't the main objective of the book, but it's definitely in there. And I feel like the second book, because it's a duology, the second one's called Two Twisted Crowns, I feel like the second one is just going to bring it all together, and we're finally going to get, I don't know, a little bit more in terms of the romance side of things, which I'm very excited about. So I do have to pick up the second one. I did start tabbing it, but I didn't actually tab too much. I feel like I just got so lost in the book that I forgot to even take too many notes. I was just enjoying it for what it is. And what I really loved about this book is that it had all of the Providence cards like listed at the start of each chapter, a little synopsis. It's almost like every chapter has this teeny tiny little prologue, and it just gives you a little glimpse into what the chapter may be about. Fourth Wing also did this, and I actually really enjoyed that because you spent the chapter trying to figure out like first little synopsis was actually referring to, and then by the time you get to the end of the chapter, you can go back and read this first bit and it will make sense. Whereas when you first read it, you're like, this is just a bunch of gibberish. I don't even know why that's there. I rated this 4 stars. Now, the reason it didn't get 5 stars is because it did get a little bit boring towards the end, like where it was supposed to pick up and the climax was supposed to happen. It didn't really happen. It kind of just like led you into book 2, if that makes sense. So I did give it 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I think I'm gonna like the second one more. Well, that's what I'm hoping anyway. So yeah, 4 stars for that one, definitely recommend. And then I got into the second book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and this was definitely my favorite of the whole series. I absolutely love this book. The first little bit was a bit boring, but then once you got into like the latter 2/3 of the book, I was just obsessed with it. Like, it reads so easy, and I know that's not always an indication of a good book just because it reads, you know, a little bit easy, but I really feel like there's a time and a place for a book that you can just pick up and whiz through, and it only takes you like 2 days to read. I feel like those kinds of books, you do need them every now and then. And I actually just really love the love story and the uniqueness of the magic system in this book. It's definitely centered around fairy tales. If you guys don't know what this series is about, it's about a girl called Evangeline, and her one wish in life is to meet her true love and fall in love and live happily ever after. And she just runs into issue after issue after issue in terms of trying to make that happen. So in the first book, she marries a prince, Polo. I don't even know how to explain it, because if there's one thing about this book that you need to know is that it is plot driven, and you will just jump from plot point to plot point to plot point, which is why it reads so fast. So much happens, but basically she marries Prince Apollo. She's also working with the Prince of Hearts, who is Jax. It's kind of like an enemies to lovers situation. They have to work together even though they both don't really want to. And it does the thing that Akatar does, where there'll be something said way back at the start of the book, and then that'll wrap up to something way at the end of the book, and it just does plot so well. So I definitely recommend this. I gave this one 5 stars. I absolutely loved this book. Then I read A Curse for True Love. I always get the name of this one wrong. I didn't want this series to end. This is the last book in the trilogy, and I just loved it so much that I was just reading this super slowly because I just didn't want it to end. I also love this book. I didn't love it as much as the second one. I think I gave this 4.5 stars overall. Why are there dogs barking? Don't they know that I'm busy? I feel like it's really hard to give a synopsis of this series without giving anything away, because the plot points for this book are a direct result of the plot points that happened in book 2. And because it's such a plot-driven book, I can't really talk about what happens in this one. All you need to know is that it's perfect and you should read the series. I also bought the Caraval series behind me. I haven't started them yet, but they're definitely on my TBR. I know you're supposed to read them before you read this series, but I didn't know. And then I was already committed to this series. I'd already started it. Here we are. I finished it, so now I have to read them first. Because there's a character that's in this book that is also in the Caraval series. So do with that what you will. I hate being sick. If there's one thing about me, being sick is such an inconvenience. Like, I just want to live my life, but I can't because I'm coughing all the time. Then we got on to the books that I read in July. Again, I only read 3 books. I think I started like 4 or 5, but I only ended up finishing 3. The first book that I ended up finishing was Hopeless by Elsie Silver, and this is the last book in the Chestnut Springs series. I did really like this book. I gave it 4 stars, and I think with the Elsie Silver Chestnut Springs series, 3 of the 5 books, there's 5? Yeah, 3 of the 5 books I loved. And then the other 2 books I did not love. This was not one of those books though. This was a really good book. I did give this one 4 stars. I know I'm not making any sense right now. Oh my gosh. This one follows Bo Eaton, and he is the Eaton brother who was enlisted into the army, and he has an accident and now he is no longer in the army. So he is basically back in the small town of Chestnut Springs, wasting his life away a little bit. He meets Bailey, and Bailey is a bit of an outcast in the Chestnut Springs town. Her family are known to be the rednecks, like the troublemakers. Her brothers are really awful people, and her dad has been to prison. She is working in a bar, but everybody paints her with the same brush as they do her brothers. So everyone treats her really awfully. Bo meets her while she's working in a bar one night. He stands up for her. He kind of vows to protect her a little bit, watch out for her while she's working so that nothing bad happens to her. And then they just form this really unlikely, I guess, relationship. It's a bit of a fake dating situation. That's what it is. Essentially, they pretend like they are getting married and that they are fiancés. Bo wants to get his family off his back because his family keep worrying about him, because after he was in the army, he got post-traumatic stress disorder and very much changed as a person. He would internalize all of his emotions, and he would never reach out to his family for help. They were very concerned about him and constantly asking him how he was. So he thought, okay, I will just pretend that I'm engaged to Bailey so that my family are off my back. For Bailey, this was a really good thing as well because the town hates her, but they love Bo Eaton. They think he's like a golden child. This helps her to get a better reputation so that she can get a better job so that she can eventually leave the town. And then he also wants to leave the town because he's just so sick of the mundaneness of Chestnut Springs. He was not made to be a ranch boy like the other Eaton brothers. It's a bit of a feelings get involved. They're not sure what's fake and what's real, and it's just a really good story. And I think it's also, I rated it really quite highly because it wraps up the whole Chestnut Springs world and all of the other Eaton brothers stories as well in this book. Like you get little snippets of the other brothers and their partners and their children and everything like that. So it was a really, really good book. If you haven't read this series, I yap on about this series in every single video because it truly is one of my favorite series. It just gives you everything that you need in a small town romance series. Then I read a bit of a rogue book. So if you haven't seen it, I did a vlog recently where I got my boyfriend, fiance, Zach, love of my life, to pick a few books for me. His task was to pick 2 books that he genuinely thought that I would like based on what he knows about my reading preferences, and then I would read them and review them. So the first book is Love and Rome. And I actually went into this with really good expectations because the cover is so cute. I don't know if you can see that super well. And it's based on a girl. She's originally from Australia, from Melbourne, and she moves to Rome to work, and she wants to pursue her career in art education, I believe. Yeah, kind of like art education, like in an art museum or an art gallery to educate. That is like her goal in life. She's also an artist. She paints, she does watercolors, and the premise of this book is that she gives herself a bit of a timeline in terms of how long she has to find a job in her career that she wants to work in. And if she doesn't find it, she's going to get straight back on a plane to Melbourne. She runs into a man called Marco, and he owns a new bar that's popped up in Rome. And he tasks her with the job of painting a mural for him. She also meets a man who is her new roommate. His name is Vincent. Vincent is the epitome of why women hate men. He is the most love-bombing, sketchy, fuckboy-esque person I've ever met. And the thing is, I was reading this book and I was like, okay, this is a bit of a spoiler. So if you do actually want to read this book, maybe don't listen to me and maybe move a minute ahead. You start finding out more about Vincent, and he seems so lovely, and I was just like, I know this behavior. I have seen one too many friends who have dated someone like this, and I know exactly how this is going to end, and it's not going to be good. So I called this straight from the start that he was going to be a fuckboy, and lo and behold, he was a fuckboy. He was actually really, really awful, and he lied and he cheated and he was awful. So yeah, I didn't hate this book. The thing that I found interesting about it was that because it's set in Rome, there's a lot of Roman terminology and Roman words, well, Italian, I should say, not Roman, Italian words, Italian foods, but she refers to them in their Italian, in like the Italian language. So I was like constantly on Google on my phone, Google Translate, trying to figure out what these things were. Like, for example, she would say like, "Si, un vero casino." And I was like, I don't know what that means. I don't speak Italian. So I was having to translate things as they came up in the book, which I think was fun because I felt like I learned a little bit of Italian while I was reading this book. And I feel like if you know Italian, you'll like this book because you'll understand what's going on a bit more. Yeah, I think this is a book that was written for people who have vacationed in Italy or in Rome. Like, that's what I think this book was essentially for. It's a quick summer read. Like, it really didn't take me too long to read, but I do feel like the plot was a bit like predictable. Like, there wasn't not a lot of tension, not a lot of, I don't know. I like to be able to guess what's going to happen next and be wrong. Because then, you know, you're actually using your brain a little bit. You're not like, oh, okay, yeah, this is going to happen next, and then she's going to meet this guy, and then he's going to turn out to be awful, and then she's going to figure it out, and then she's going to plot to do something to get her revenge. And it was just like, it was very predictable. So I didn't love it. I ended up giving it two stars, I believe, which is probably one of the lowest ratings that I've had. But I am very excited to read the next one that Zach picked out for me. I'm sure that one's going to be a lot better. It's by Christina Lauren, and I feel like this was a debut novel by an author that I've never met. that I've never read from before. So that's another thing to consider as well. Like, she wasn't particularly well versed in how to write a romance book. That's all I'll say. And the last book I want to talk about is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Now, I did not expect that I would be picking this book up in July. It was not a book that I had on my TBR. It's not a book I'd heard much about, but suddenly it was coming up on my TikTok, and I know that they've just made it into a mini series. And so I thought, you know, why not try a little bit of young adult mystery and see how it goes. I did not expect to love this book as much as I did. I already want to go out and read the rest of the books in the series. I absolutely love this. This was definitely a 5-star. It was everything that you want in a book to get you out of a reading slump. And what I mean by that is this book has so many little different elements of media that keep you interested. Basically, the premise is Pip is a girl who lives in a small town, and as part of her final year project for school, she is revisiting a murder case that happened 5 years ago in the past with 2 kids that went to school at her school. A girl and a guy who were dating are involved, and the girl goes missing, but there's evidence that she was murdered, and the guy committed suicide. So everyone in this town believes that this guy has killed this girl and hidden the body somewhere. Her instinct is that this is not the case, and that Sal, the guy, is innocent, and that there must be something else going on there. So she is investigating all of the old evidence and interviewing the town to try to figure out what actually happened. And when I talk about, like in the last book, being able to guess every plot point, this book was the opposite. I was constantly trying to guess what was going to happen and who the murderer was. And every time I was like, oh, maybe it's that, then she would go, yeah, maybe it's that guy, which made you know that it's not that guy because you're only this far through the book. So obviously she's not going to be right about who killed the guy and the girl this far through the book. So this book kept me on my toes. It kept me constantly guessing and using my brain. And I just loved how much different media there was. Like, there were production logs, there were interview notes, there were newspaper clippings, there were like little, I don't know if you can see that, but like brain maps about who she thought was the killer. It was just a really good book, and I didn't predict the ending, which I actually really enjoyed. 5 stars. If you want something to get you out of a reading slump, this is definitely the one for you. I know the audiobooks are also on Spotify, so if you are better off listening to an audiobook, I feel like this would be a really good audiobook to get into. So yeah. So they are all the books that I read in June and July. I know there weren't very many, but I did have a really fun time with the books that I read, and I feel like I really got out of my comfort zone with the books that I read as well, which was great. I will see you guys for my next video. I think it's going to be books that get me out of a reading slump, because I've got some really, really good recommendations for books that I've read that have literally made me want to keep reading. So definitely tune in for that, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. Thanks for joining. Bye!